Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. There is a message that was sent to me, and the message reads like this. Hello, Brother Nashi. How are you? Can you please post my own story as hidden identity? Never reveal or share my identity with anyone because my identity, it is quite important to me. I am a woman who is aged 35 years old. I do not want to mention where I grew up in, my brother, but this is what happened to me. When I was still going to school, that was when all of a sudden I was then taken by my parents and I was taken to the village. I didn't like what my parents did to me at that time. As someone who had grew up in the city, I was used to be in the city. But when my grandmother got so sick at that time, she was around 80 years or so. She was very old, Brother Nashi, when I was taken to her. And my mom then told me that I was supposed to take care of her since I was like the oldest around amongst her grandchildren. And when I started staying with my grandmother, that was when my grandmother got so sick, and I started to notice that there were a lot of strange things that kept on happening at her compound. But at that time, my spiritual eyes, they were still closed. I was blind spiritually. I had no idea that my auntie was actually a witch, and when I was with her, she had used a witchcraft to bewitch my parents so that they can actually take me to the village and then transfer me from that school that I was going to in the city and transferring me so that I can start to go to school in the villages. And when I was staying with my grandmother, I can say that that was when my grandmother really got so sick. She was forever lying on her deathbed, and my grandmother kept on complaining, and she was saying that she felt that inside her leg, she felt as if there was a big wound. She kept on scratching and scratching, but there was nothing that could actually come out. Then there was this other day, my brother, we then saw that on my grandmother's leg there was a pimple that came out. So this pimple, it kept on growing and growing, and it seemed as if inside this pimple there was some fluid that was inside of it. So everyone just thought that maybe if we could actually remove that pimple, then our grandmother was going to be okay. The day that this pimple was removed from her leg, that was when her leg started to get rotten. The wound that was on her leg, it was very big. We actually saw that there were worms that were coming out of her leg. Each and every day, my brother, I will boil water, and then we will mix the water with salt so that we can just clean my grandmother's wound. And each and every night it would irritate me because late at night my grandmother, she will call out my name and she will be screaming in pain. And I kept on telling my parents that I wanted to return back to the city. And after I had complained for a very long time, and when my grandmother kept on getting really sick, my parents then came and collected me and my grandmother so that we can go with our grandmother to the doctors that were in the city. Whilst we were staying at our house in the city, that was when my grandmother called me one day. When I went to my grandmother, I still remember that it was in the afternoon. My grandmother was holding this black belt, and my grandmother started to tell me about her belt. She told me that she had bought this belt from this other man, and it was a very expensive belt, and she wanted me to have this belt. But when I took that black belt, my brother, it was so smooth as if it was a snake. I swear to you that I felt as if I was holding a snake in my hands. So I got so scared and I said, no, I do not want this thing. Then my grandmother said, you have to take it because you are the one that I have chosen. I have chosen you amongst all of my grandchildren. Doesn't that make you to feel very special? I want you to have this belt, for I told this belt that you are the one who is going to take care of this belt. And when I was holding this belt, I felt as if it was actually moving. That was when I got so scared and I ran out of that spare bedroom where my grandmother was staying, and I went and I spoke with my mother about this issue. I told my mom that when I was holding this belt, I felt as if that it was moving, then it suddenly disappeared. So I got scared and I told my mother about this issue. She got angry because she knew that my grandmother wanted me to be in a covenant with her. My mother then said, no matter what you do, never accept any gift from your grandmother, because she is going to give you a gift, but hidden behind that gift, it will come with the spirit of witchcraft and you're going to be a witch. I really got so scared. And my friends, I had my other friends that kept on coming. So when they would come, when they would go and speak with my grandmother will keep on complaining to my friends that I should accept this gift, for she had chosen me. And my friends said that your grandmother is really weird. She keeps on telling us about this belt that you have to accept. Why don't you just accept this belt? Maybe it is because of old age that makes her to say all of this weird stuff. But I was scared. I didn't want to accept that belt. Then my grandmother's leg started to get rotten when she was still alive. There were a lot of worms that were coming out and it was so swollen. That was when my grandmother was rushed to the hospital. When she was rushed to the hospital, she felt a little bit better. But what was happening to her was that my grandmother, she kept on having these black spots, as if there was a snake that was biting her, and after the snake would have bitten her, then it will leave its own poison. So by the time that my grandmother died, she had these black spots all over her body, and you could actually see that the place where she would have been bitten by that snake, there was no blood that was flowing through that place. The day that my grandmother passed away, my grandmother kept on calling my name, and I felt that this was not all right for someone to die whilst they will be calling out your name. After my grandmother had been buried, I kept on having these dreams. I would see my grandmother, she would be holding that belt and she would be like, here, take this belt, here, take this belt. And when I would refuse, then the belt will transform itself, then it will become this poisonous snake. Then my grandmother will start to speak with that snake, and the snake will ask my grandmother questions like, you promised me that when you are about to die, you are going to leave behind someone who is going to take care of me, who is going to feed me, but who is going to feed me now? Then the snake will start to fight with the spirit of my grandmother, and my grandmother will look at me and she will curse me, and she will say that if you refuse to accept this belt, then you are never going to enjoy your life. I kept on praying, my brother. I got married, and then when I gave birth to my daughter, my last born, when I was in labor, I saw this other bird that just came into that maternity ward where we were. Even the nurse, they were surprised and they said, yo, so there is a witch in here. So you witches, when you come to give birth, you actually bring some of your tokologies here. And people were just laughing. The nurses that were with us, they started laughing. But what they didn't know was that this bird, I felt as if this was my grandmother's spirit that had came to welcome my daughter whom I had given birth to. As for my daughter, she has a lot of epileptic seizures, and in the end, I then told my mom that I needed to stay with my daughter where me and my husband are staying now, because I was told that if someone is suffering from these epileptic seizures, the moment that they have a seizure, then they fall into the fire, then it will be very difficult for them to be cured again. So I then took my daughter so that I can be with her at all the times, so that I can check up on her at all the times. My daughter, she suffers a lot, but the reason as to why my daughter is suffering, I know for a fact that my grandmother, since she saw that she is unable to make me to become a witch like she was, she is now focusing on my daughter. She wants to hand over this witchcraft, this spirit of witchcraft, to my daughter. But I am trying to pray for my daughter so that she will never become a witch, because I know that there is nothing that will come out of being a witch. And I pray each and every day, even though my daughter faces a lot of spiritual attacks, my grandmother's spirit, it attacks me, my brother. Financially, sometimes we can just lose money just like that, but I am not giving up, because I know that God, with time, he is going to deliver me. I know that God, he is fighting in my corner, and I am going to defeat this spirit of witchcraft. I will never accept this snake, no matter what, my brother. I will never accept this snake so that I can become a witch. That is my own story, my brother. I want to encourage your listeners to always pray and keep on praying. Dear listeners, right there was a narration that was sent to me by our dear sister. Strange things do happen in this world. Just imagine that you are a woman and you go to labor, and when you have given birth, then you will see that there is a bird that is just going around the maternity ward, and you feel in your spirit that this bird, it is nothing but the spirit of your grandmother. Strange things do happen in this world.